You have a special segment that we are about to unveil. The first ever NFL Judge Ungar realignment.
Yeah, um, I figured Major League Baseball's now talking about going through realignment, so I decided I'm going to do the same thing.
So I'm going to pull up the graphics. I'm going to go in order of the way you sent me this via text, the way you did it. So this graphic here, and we may adjust so that. Oops, hold on. I just cut. There we go. That should be good right there. So this is Josh's NFL realignment, and the first four teams. I know the topic bar cuts down there on the bottom
Yeah.
left.
So,
Um, okay, we'll just do it like that. You have the Pacific Division, which is the Seahawks, the Niners, the Chargers, and the Rams. So I'm going to let you explain each process in the division, and then I'm going to react to it.
So I figured with the Pacific Division, just put all three California teams in, and then Seattle was the obvious choice to include with them because they're in the Pacific Northwest. So it keeps three of the four teams from the actual NFC West in this new division, and I'm just replacing the Cardinals with the Chargers.
Yeah, I agree with you here. This division makes sense. Before we move on, I think it's important to let the people know, though, that so your divisions are not like AFC Pacific, NFC Pacific. These are 8 new name divisions.
Correct. If you want to make it AFC and NFC, I guess you can. I didn't really consider that, though. So, whatever.
Okay. The next division we have, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here in my files, will be the Great Lakes Division.
Okay.
Which will consist of the Buffalo Bills, the Indianapolis Colts, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Cleveland Browns.
So I did strongly consider putting Chicago in this division instead of Cincinnati. Detroit was also considered. But ultimately, I decided to keep Cincinnati with Cleveland. And Buffalo, I mean, Cleveland and Buffalo are called the Lake Erie Bros. So it made sense to put them into this division. And I've always wanted Indianapolis and Cleveland to be in the same division because when they play each other, at least the past couple times, I've felt like it's been really good games, and I view them as a bit of a rival for the Browns. So I'm like, okay, if I'm realigning the divisions, the Colts should be in the same division. So there's your Great Lakes division. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Indianapolis. But again, I strongly considered replacing Cincinnati with the Chicago Bears.
So here's where I'm at. I think that the Bengals and Browns make sense because they're both in Ohio. I took these division realignment as more so geographically. So to me, the Bills should be in the same division with the likes of the Patriots, the Jets, the Giants. Keep all New York teams in one division. And I think if you're going to have a division called the Great Lakes, it doesn't really make sense to have Indianapolis in that division. I would have rather seen Chicago in here and have Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago. And again, maybe you name it something else because I think that would make the most sense for Indy to stay in the division. I actually think the one that probably doesn't belong is Buffalo.
See, I understand that, but Buffalo is on a Great Lake. So
they are. So if you're going to keep it a Great Lakes division, then to me, the Colts don't make sense.
Indianapolis and Cincinnati were two of the teams I was struggling with of where to put them. I did think about, like I said, replacing Cincinnati with Chicago.
To me, you just rename this Midwest and you do Chicago, Indy, Cleveland, Cincinnati.
Okay. I understand that. But again, because it was the Great Lakes division, I include Buffalo in there. Buffalo and Cleveland, like I said, they're Lake Erie bros. So it made sense to keep them in there. I understand your argument about Indianapolis. I just really wanted a way to put Indy in the same division with Cleveland, Buffalo. Packers were definitely in consideration. I really struggled with the Great Lakes division, and also, like I said, I kept the NFC North the same way. I thought about, do I put Green Bay in this division? Do I put Chicago? This was one of those divisions I had a hard time with.
So let's then move to the, hold on. Let's then go to the North Division, because that is the division that stay the same. Bears, Lions, Packers, Vikings.
Yes. And like I said, I thought about maybe putting Indianapolis in this division and putting Chicago in the Great Lakes division. I also considered putting Detroit in the Great Lakes division because you have Lake Michigan. But ultimately, I decided to keep this division the same way. They're already pretty geographically centric. So I'm like, why break it up if I don't have to?
I actually think what you just said makes sense. If you swap the Lions in the Great Lakes division, so let's go back to the Great Lakes division for a second. If you put the Lions in here instead of the Colts, and you put the Colts in this division with Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, and call it the North, think about it geographically, where Indianapolis and Illinois sort of board each other. Then you still have Wisconsin and Minneapolis, which are obviously right next to each other. To me, that makes the most sense.
Okay. And I understand that. Chicago and Detroit were the two that I strongly considered putting in the Great Lakes division, like I said, rather than Cincinnati and Indianapolis. Those were the four teams I had a big time struggle with.
So this is where I think your exercise would be a little bit easier on your end, is if you would have made sort of like how they have the AFC and the NFC now, but you rename the divisions. Because putting 8 different names on a division does handicap you more, in my opinion, the way the current NFL is set up, because you have to have 2 conferences.
Okay. I understand that. If you want to call this the NFC North, you can. If you want to call this the AFC Great Lakes, fine, whatever.
You could even rename the North to the Central, and I think it would make even more sense. Because then the Colts, or even like Kansas City, who we're going to get to in a minute, that's where you could fly them, because they're another one that's not really West, but you don't know where to put them. They're sort of in that same situation as the Colts.
Yeah, Kansas City doesn't exactly belong in the AFC West.
So let's then move to, let's see, what do I have next on my sheet? I have the Southeast Division.
Okay.
Which features, this makes sense to me, all 4 of them. Bucks, Falcons, Dolphins, Jags.
This was probably one of the easiest to do. Just put all 3 Florida teams together, and then, Atlanta's right there. Ta-da!
Yeah. I mean, there's no argument. That obviously makes sense. And I do like that you're keeping some divisional rivalries, because that's the biggest worry with this, is obviously, spoiler alert, you don't have the Ravens and Steelers in the same division. You don't have Eagles, Cowboys in the same division. So how do we keep as much rivalries as we can physically intact?
Yeah, Dolphins, Jags, that's an okay rivalry. They don't play each other every season. But Buccaneers, Falcons, they're going to be the top 2 teams in the NFC South. So there you go.
And they also play each other week 1. We may be talking about that game in a little bit.
Yes.
So the next division I have is the It looks like the Mid-Atlantic Division, which this one features the Ravens, the Commanders, the Patriots, and the Panthers. A weird mix, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. Because you could make an argument that the Jets or the Giants belong in this division, which I understand. But like, you know, but when you look at it, like Baltimore and Washington, they're both pretty close to the Atlantic. Boston or Foxborough is almost on the Atlantic, and so is Charlotte. So I'm like, okay, this kind of makes sense because Carolina is not in the South. They're in North Carolina, not South Carolina.
Well, but it's kind of more south than east. That's always the way I look at it.
But like with this setup, Baltimore and Washington would play twice a season. That would be a good matchup. Carolina and New England, seeing Bryce Young against Drake May. Baltimore and New England, they've had some really good games in the past. So it'd be fun to see that matchup. And
yeah,
huh?
This one's weird to me. This is where I think that the splitting it up into the AFC and the NFC would have made more sense. What I would have done is AFC East, Bills, Giants, Jets, Patriots. That's all New York teams plus New England, Boston. NFC East, Commanders, Ravens, Steelers, Eagles. Pennsylvania and Maryland teams together, to me, makes more sense geographically, and you can figure out what to do with Carolina later.
Okay. Yeah, Carolina was another one of those teams. I'm like, I'm not sure what to do with them.
Like, to me, Carolina does belong. Out of all the divisions the NFL currently has listed, Carolina does belong in the South. That's just my opinion.
I think they belong more so in the East instead of like Miami.
I agree with that, but Carolina is more South than East. But I agree they should be in the East more than Miami.
So, okay, what's next?
We have the Southwest Division.
Okay.
Which features the Cardinals, the Saints, and then the two Texas teams, and the Cowboys and the Texans.
So, with this one, like, I know New Orleans isn't exactly Southwest. I probably could have put the Raiders in this division, but I'm like, well, no, Raiders feel like they belong more with Denver and Kansas City, and I wasn't going to put Kansas City and Denver in the Southwest division. So that left me with Arizona, New Orleans, and the two Texas teams.
I agree with the two Texas teams. I don't even know if I agree with Arizona. Even though they're Southwest, they do feel more West than anything. Like a second Pacific. And New Orleans just doesn't feel Southwest at all.
New Orleans, once I put Atlanta, Miami, Tampa Bay, and Jacksonville together, I got stuck about where to put them. And because New Orleans is somewhat close to Dallas and Houston, that was my strongest support for them being in this division. Yeah. So I know New Orleans doesn't make a ton of sense alongside Arizona. But again, once I put Atlanta with the three Floridian teams, I didn't have a lot of choices about where to put the Saints.
No, I agree. Like, I think the Saints and Panthers belong in the same division still together. I just don't know yet, based off these names, where to put them.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, that was the Southwest. So we are going to the Central Division.
This is where I have
which, okay, so this to me Tennessee feels completely off. I'm going to be the first to say it out loud here.
Okay.
So here's what I would say. I think Tennessee, New Orleans, and Carolina could all be in a division together.
Okay. But who would that fourth team be?
I think Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, and Arizona could all be one division. So swap Tennessee for Arizona.
I did think about that. I really did. But again, I was like, Arizona kind of makes sense with Dallas and Houston.
I think Arizona's more west. I think it makes more sense than Vegas. It's like right next to Vegas. It's around the Denver. It's in the same time zone as Denver. It's in the mountain time zone.
Okay.
So that to me makes the most sense.
Tennessee, again, was one of those teams that I'm like, I don't know what to do with them.
They're so geographically far away from Denver and Vegas, though. Like that, it doesn't make sense if you're going based off geographics.
I did think about putting like Tennessee, Cincinnati. That actually would have been a good division. Tennessee, Cincinnati, Carolina, and New Orleans.
In my opinion, Cincinnati has to stay with Cleveland. Both Ohio teams.
That's true.
So to me, the Titans,
basically in this scenario, I'm replacing the Chargers with the Titans.
And that to me makes not a lot of sense, but I understand the predicament you're in, because if you go back to the Pacific Division, let's pull that up real quick. Seahawks, Niners, Chargers, Rams, that obviously all makes sense with the three California teams. You have to keep those the same.
And I have Cleveland and Cincinnati together in the Great Lakes Division.
And Seattle makes sense. I mean, you could do even Seattle, Arizona. If we go back to the Central Division, you could do Seattle, Arizona, Denver, and Vegas is one division.
What about Kansas City, though?
Kansas City could technically move more to the, what did you call it? I know you called it the Great Lakes Division, which again, I think that would actually need a name change, because you could do Kansas City, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. You could call this the Central Division. This to me is more central, where you could do a West Division and then you could do a Pacific.
Okay. I understand that.
Because there's really two tiers of West Coast teams. There's the California teams, but then there's the Denver, Vegases, and Arizonas.
Right. Hey, this wasn't easy for me to put together.
Oh, I did. Trust me, I know that because I did it in 2020 when we were going through COVID. So I have done this exercise before. Okay. The final division, the Northeast. Jets, Steelers, Giants, Eagles. Obviously, I have made my feelings well known about this. I think the Jets and Giants need to go with Buffalo. I do like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia together. To me, if you keep one of each of their rivals, you keep the Steelers with the Ravens and the Eagles with the Commanders. That is more of a Northeast division. And the Jets, Giants, Bills, and Patriots can be an Eastern division, or whatever you want to call it, if you want to go by a different name.
I understand that. It just makes, since the Jets and Giants don't actually play in New York, I'm like, well, New Jersey's close to Pennsylvania. There you go.
But New Jersey is still like a paramount of New York, right next to Buffalo. It's more closer to Buffalo, and then Boston, Massachusetts is more closer to that than Pennsylvania.
Yes, but it was also like, I want to see the Steelers and Eagles play each other twice this season, not have to wait 4 years to see it again, because it's the Battle of Pennsylvania. We get the Penguins and Flyers a couple times this season. The Phillies and Pirates always play each other.
Oh, you can keep the Steelers and Eagles, no problem. It's the Jets and Giants I would kick out.
And you would replace them with the Ravens and Commanders.
Yes.
Okay? That's a valid argument. I totally get it.
Because first of all, I keep the Ravens Steelers rivalry. There's no way they'd get rid of that rivalry.
Yeah. That was a hard one because you know how much I love that rivalry.
Yes.
I strongly considered that option of putting the Steelers with the Eagles and Commanders and Ravens. I really did consider that. Ultimately, though, I just figured let's put the Steelers and Eagles with the Jets and Giants.
I think if the NFL realigns, they're going to try to keep division integrity as much as possible, aka keep the current rivalries as much as possible.
I would think so.
Because the other thing is, there's no way that the Packers and Bears aren't, which you have obviously, but there's no way they're not in the same division to me.
No, I agree with you. Like I said, with the Great Lakes division, I strongly considered putting both Chicago and Detroit in that division instead of Cincinnati and Indianapolis.
Obviously, I think it's a cool name, but I don't know if the NFL has enough teams to make that work.
I mean, you could put like Cincinnati with Tennessee, Carolina, and New Orleans. You can actually make.
I love this, by the way, from Grandizer. This is the best comedy he's ever made.
Yes, I love that.
So yeah, let's go back. Let's take a look at the Great Lakes division real quick. So go on and finish your thought.
So what I could have done actually is replaced Cincinnati and Indianapolis with Chicago and Detroit, and then done Cleveland, Buffalo, Chicago, and Detroit because they're all Great Lakes.
They are, but again, the issue is then you take out the Packers-Bears rivalry.
That's true, but like you would get, I think you would get a rivalry with Cleveland and Detroit.
That's why, to me, if you keep this name for the division, you actually take out Indy and you put in Detroit, and you just swap Indy and Detroit basically.
Okay, I understand that, but if you're doing that, I would take Cincinnati out and put in Chicago.
Yeah, it's hard for me though to take out the Battle of Ohio.
I understand that, but you could get a new rivalry with Cleveland and Chicago. Like I said, I really wanted to put Cleveland and Indianapolis in the same division.
It's hard to take out all the division, most of the division rivalries in general. I mean, it's hard to shake up the AFC North. Let's be real. I think the only division that wouldn't mind a complete realignment is like the AFC South.
Yes, Indianapolis does not belong in the South. What are we doing?
Yeah, again, that's why I think if you do the Central Division with like Indy, Kansas City, and maybe like Green Bay and Chicago, and I don't know.
Yeah, trust me, I thought long and hard about this. It wasn't like I went 15 minutes and done.
No, I understand.